Powerlifters should train more like bodybuilders. I've talked about this before in short videos, but longer videos allow me to explain better. People don't realize how much size influences strength. In fact, it's the biggest factor. But before we get into that, let's talk about something I think a lot of people wonder from the title. If powerlifters should train more like bodybuilders, why don't bodybuilders outlift powerlifters? And the thing is, when bodybuilders actually do train the big three, they usually are very strong and outlift most powerlifters. Look at Ronnie Coleman repping 800 pounds on squats easily. A lot of bodybuilders don't train the big three as much as powerlifters, or at all, so part is just simply their form isn't as efficient. Another part is how much force a given amount of muscle produces. It seems that strength athletes' muscles actually produce more force for a given amount of cross-sectional area. The muscle fibers themselves aren't actually getting stronger though. In fact, a strength athlete's muscle fibers are as strong as an untrained lifter's. The change is actually due to restructuring of connective tissue in the muscle, making it more efficient at transmitting force. So that explains the difference in strength between powerlifters and bodybuilders, efficiency of form, and connective tissue changes. Both of these can be handled fine by just doing the big three consistently with some basic strength training principles. But here's why powerlifters should still train more like bodybuilders, that is focus more on size. Looking at studies among strength athletes, the correlation between muscle mass and prime movers has an R-squared value of 0.65 to 0.9. If you're unfamiliar with statistics, that basically means 65 to 90% of the difference in strength simply comes down to difference in the size of the prime movers. And that other 10 to 35% will come down to other factors. That could be things that we are able to change, like the efficiency of our form and the connective tissue adaptations we talked about, or it could be things we're not able to change. That could be how our muscles insert and also our individual leverages. There's also something called allometric scaling. This is basically something that assumes all differences in strength simply come down to differences in size. And when you use allometric scaling to predict the world records in Olympic weightlifting, it has an R-squared value of 0.96, suggesting that size accounts for 96% of the differences in strength when it comes to Olympic weightlifting. I know it's not powerlifting, but still a strength sport, so the same general principles are going to apply. Simply put, no factor matters more in terms of strength output than the size of our muscles. Unlike the other factors that we can control, the efficiency of our form and connective tissue adaptations, we have much more room for improvement when it comes to hypertrophy. These other factors plateau much earlier in our training career. So what does this mean in terms of practical recommendations? Well, you can still have the basis of your program be the big three lifts, close variations with basic strength training principles. This will cover the efficiency of form and connective tissue adaptations. But our big three lifts are generally limited by systemic fatigue or just our weakest link. We may not be able to handle more sets of deadlifts because we're just too fatigued, but we can do some extra hamstring curls. Our bench may be limited by our chest, but our triceps can handle more work. Now, there are tons of people who talk about how to optimize hypertrophy. The biggest bang for your buck things, though, are training close to or at failure with stable exercises that isolate the muscle you're trying to work, ideally at long muscle lengths. I find for squats and deadlifts, you can get away with less isolation work. In fact, I've never done anything but squats and deadlifts to build my legs, and I'm in the mid-700s on both lifts. I'm probably a big exception, and most people are going to benefit from at least a little isolation work, and those who have bad leverages are probably going to benefit from more. When you have poor leverages for a lift, it's going to cause you more systemic fatigue, so you might be limited by that before your muscles are to a greater degree. Thus, you need more isolation work. When it comes to bench press in particular, you really want more isolation work. There's a reason why there are stereotypes about powerlifters having physiques like a T-Rex. If you look at muscle activation in the bench press, the triceps and shoulders don't get worked much until we hit more maximal weights, and at 70% of your bench press max, the pecs are already maximally activated. The body maximally recruits the pecs first since they're more efficient for the movement. It's only past this point that the pecs and triceps start getting more activated. But unless you're hitting actual failure, the triceps and delts won't get worked that hard at all. Most powerlifting work is generally done further from failure, so our triceps and delts aren't being worked as hard as they could be. However, they can still be useful for us at a maximal lift, so if we built them up stronger, we're going to lift more weight overall. This is why I always recommend more accessory work for bench in particular, and a big reason you see a lot of the best bench pressers train a lot more like bros, and why bodybuilders seem to be better at bench press compared to squat and deadlift. Also why it can be really stupid for powerlifters to focus on getting stronger at the same body weight. There's limited room for improvement on the other factors we talked about, more efficient form and connective tissue adaptations. It will be much harder to gain muscle if you aren't willing to gain weight. Bulking and cutting is much more efficient than recomposition. If you're really set on staying at a certain body weight, you can still do bulking and cutting cycles of smaller amounts to stay in the same general vicinity. But really, if you want long-term progress and to get a lot stronger than you are currently, unless you have a high body fat level to begin with, you're going to need to gain weight over time. Anyways, I hope this video helped you guys realize how important hypertrophy is for strength. Add in more bodybuilding style isolation work and focus on gaining weight over time, and your strength will greatly benefit. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And once again, thanks for watching.